Everyone, and welcome to my channel where I talk about movies. And today I want to continue on with another Criterion release to coincide with the November 2023 Barnes & Noble half price sale on Criterion titles. This is a release that is been in the Criterion collection for a long time, but I had just purchased it in the recent flash sale. This is 3 silent films from director Josef Von Sternberg, and that is the director himself, a very photogenic guy with a great head of hair on the cover. And I'd never seen these films before. They were an absolute revelation. If you like silent films, these are a must-have. Von Sternberg was one of the great directors of silent film, although he is known today more for his 7-film collaboration with Marlene Dietrich in the 1930s, which commenced with The Blue Angel. So Sternberg, just as way as introduction, Sternberg was a emigre from Vienna. He did not come from a wealthy family. He had to really scrounge for a living from the time he was a teenager. He got involved with film when silent films was mostly on the East Coast in Fort Lee, New Jersey, and he learned everything there was about film from the bottom up. He knew it all: editing, writing. He was assistant director. He knew all about the technical aspects of film itself. And then he went out to Hollywood. He had great ambition, and he was noticed, and but he wanted to see if he could direct a movie. So he made a very low budget movie. This is, I think, 1925. He was around 30 years old by then. And he made a film called The Salvation Hunters. And this was low budget, independent. It was considered an art film. It was considered avant-garde. It attracted the attention of Charlie Chaplin and Mary Pickford, who had recently formed their own film company called United Artists. Chaplin wanted him to make a film starring Edna Purviance, who was in Chaplin's A Woman of Paris. And he did, in fact, make this film. But Chaplin didn't like it. He shelved it. Never, I think it had one screening in LA and then never screened again. And supposedly Chaplin destroyed the one print, although there's rumors there's another print in existence, but as of now it is yet to be found. And then he worked on a film for Mary Pickford that never came to fruition. So, but he was working for Paramount, and he helped. He was given the credit for saving silent film that the studio was very displeased with. So they offered him the job of directing a major production for them, and that was Underworld. This is 1927 from a screenplay by Ben Hecht, starring George Bancroft, Clive Brook, who is on the cover here, and Evelyn Brent. And this was a gangster film. This was really the first gangster film that went through the roof as far as the box office went. We saw the gangster story from the gangster's point of view. Ben Hecht writing the screenplay. He was a Chicago reporter. He knew all about the gangsters of the Roaring Twenties. So the two main gangsters here in the film, George Bancroft being one of them, were based on loosely based on some of the real life gangsters that Hecht was very familiar with. Hecht would go on to write Scarface for Howard Hawks. Hecht couldn't stand what Sternberg did with his scenario, his screenplay. He thought that Sternberg was spending much too much time on the sort of love triangle that develops in this movie. George Bancroft who was a very much like a bull in a china shop kind of actor. But the gangster that he plays here he's rather he has a good heart, so he saves. Here's Clive Brook. This is when he's all cleaned up, when when Bancroft first comes across him, he is a drunk, and but Bancroft takes a shine to him, and so he. And then his Moll, played by Evelyn Brent, starts to fall in love with Clive Brook, even though she is Bancroft's Moll. So the film is made up of really the kind of exquisite gestures and eye movements, and that Sternberg became very famous for. But the studio did not like this movie. They didn't know what to do with it. They only planned to play it for 1 week at the Paramount Theater in New York City. This was the days when the studios owned the movie theaters, and it did fantastic word of mouth. And they had to add, it actually played around the clock. This was such a exciting. The gangster elements of it were so exciting. And the storyline really gripped people. And it was a big hit in Paris. 2 years later, when it played in Paris, a huge hit. So it would seem that Sternberg was on his way. Now, his next movie, I'm not sure if it's his next movie. There's lost films, as in all silent film careers. But it's certainly, the next film in this set is The Last Command. This is from 1928, and that is Emil Jannings on the cover. Evelyn Brent comes back to play to play the love interest in this movie, and William Powell. I think this is his, if not his first, one of his first major roles. Although he is not the star, one of the stars of the film. So Emil Jannings, who was well known to American audiences from The Last Laugh, from F.W. Murnau a couple of years before. He came to Hollywood, a German actor, coming to Hollywood. Certainly one of the great actors of silent film, and he would work with Von Sternberg again in The Blue Angel with Dietrich's first film and first sound film. This is... The Last Command is about a Hollywood extra, an old man. He's just about done for, but he gets employed as an extra in these stories of the Russian Civil War that were very popular at the time. So we see him go through this awful experience, and Sternberg wanted to show this. This is one of the major parts of the film, is how awful extras were treated in Hollywood films. And he is there because he is spotted by the director, who remembers him. The director, also a Russian, and as is this extra. And then when he looks in the mirror, when this old man looks in the mirror, he remembers his past from 10 years before, when he, a first cousin to the Tsar, was the lead general of the Russian armies. And then the revolution breaks out. Powell and Evelyn Brent were revolutionaries. She gets caught up with the general, and it's just a great love story. But then we see the general in a kind of Pirandello sequence, in which now in Hollywood 10 years later, he is playing another general. He is basically playing himself. Jannings is absolutely superb in this film, but so is Evelyn Brent. And Evelyn Brent she didn't really come out of nowhere. She had been in a lot of films. Louise Brooks, in her book Lulu in Hollywood, she talks about Evelyn Brent as being a dreadful actress, but when she came to Sternberg, suddenly she became magnificent. And she is indeed magnificent in both Underworld and The Last Command. And Louise Brooks says that Sternberg was the greatest director of actresses in Hollywood. And there's no doubt of that. You see her here too. She's so expressive, and in the revolutionary sequences, it's just amazing because she has to play two parts. you don't really know, you know, does she really love this general? Does she not? Is she really a committed revolutionary? It keeps you on edge. So then the third film in this series, and this is Docks of New York, and here we have George Bancroft again. Bancroft was not the greatest actor. He couldn't do a lot of stuff. What he did well. He was a sort of a Victor McLaglen type. He was, or Wallace Beery. He laughs a lot. He laughed a lot in real life. He's kind of a bull in a china shop, but he's good at playing that rough, gruff character who also has a heart. And in Docks in New York, he gets to show that. And here we don't have Evelyn Brent as the love interest here. Here it's Betty Compson, and Betty Compson, she too was not an actress who did a lot of trying to find a picture to show you. But she has her moment here. She is with Bancroft in Docks of New York. It takes place over 24 hours. It concerns a suicide. It concerns a murder. She is. This is probably a little bit better picture. We get a fake marriage. We get two set pieces set in a rowdy dockside nightclub. This is the movie is set in 1900, pre-Prohibition. So it's really about the tender moments in the midst of all this brouhaha. And there's on this set, and that's what Sternberg was great in, these relationships, these very weird, unusual relationships between men and women. Now, the extras here, we get two on each of the discs. There is one extra. On the first two, there's visual essays. Both of these are fantastic. One is by Tag Gallagher, and if you know him, you know this is something very, very special. And then on the third disc, we get an interview with Sternberg himself from 1968 for Swedish television. Now, Sternberg, after the Marlene Dietrich movies, his career just went kerflooey. He did make a few more films, but he was still a relatively young man. I think he was only around 40, in his early 40s at the end of the Dietrich era. And he never really got a foothold in Hollywood after the Dietrich films had sort of run their course with the public. I have to mention Evelyn Brent, just so fantastic and memorable in these two films that she's in with Sternberg. By the mid-30s, she was appearing in Jungle Jim movies, Hopalong Cassidy movies. So the fate of silent film stars is always a precarious one. Criterion offers 2 musical scores for each of these films. I could have listened to both of them, or at least the ones I listened to were so good. I almost want to go back and listen to the alternate film scores here. And also in this booklet we get a in the film score, the musicians who wrote the film scores have an article too about how their approach to scoring silent films. There's also a section from Sternberg's Fun in Chinese Laundry, his memoir, where he talks about his relationship to Emil Jannings, especially on The Last Command. I got to read that book. I've never read his memoirs. It's always been mentioned as one of the great Hollywood books of all time. For some reason, I have not read it yet. Now, I do have a book, and this is from the mid-'60s. I picked this up in a used bookstore in Staunton, Virginia. I had no idea I could find this book. This is The Films of Josef Von Sternberg, and this is by Andrew Saris. And this was a monogram to accompany the 1965 retrospective of Josef Von Sternberg. Saris was a big fan of Sternberg. He placed him in his pantheon in his famous book, The American Cinema. And I just want to read one little thing for anybody who's still with me here. Saris was just there was nobody like him at discussing the film directors of the classic Hollywood era that he was fond of. And this is how he describes Sternberg's movies. The characters generally make their first entrance at a moment in their lives when there is no tomorrow. Knowingly or unknowingly, they have reached the end of the bottom, but they will struggle a short time longer, about 90 minutes of screen time, to discover the truth about themselves and those they love. Highly recommend another Criterion classic for this sale if you don't have this, the 3 silent films of Josef Von Sternberg. Okay, thanks a lot for everybody who managed to listen. I do appreciate it. Comments are welcome. Take care.